Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second day of the technical sessions of the 20th Kappa Conference and the 42nd National Conference of CS Sri Lanka. In times of challenges, there is no doubt that the professionals like you all shall adapt and evolve if you all continue to add value to your respective corporates and to your countries and be in demand not just locally but of course globally. This conference will therefore be an important platform to help you to upskill, to get ready to face new challenges, but most importantly, this conference is also so important to talk about how you can groove yourself to protect the planet and the environment around you, especially whilst thriving in these challenging times. So, before we kick off today's proceedings, let's have a look at what happened yesterday during the day one of the technical sessions.
From the dawn of time, we have inherited values, knowledge, practices that have allowed us to prosper. We call this our heritage, a gift passed down from one generation to the next. But with the advancement of our species, the growth of our kind, what state have we left our world in? As we continue to engage in unsustainable development and business practices, we bring about catastrophic repercussions on our planet and our economy. Is this the heritage we want to leave behind to our future generations? The 8 technical sessions that follow draws attention to and showcases the importance of considering the right environmental, social and governance practices. We will delve into what the relevance of stakeholder capitalism is in the current context and why long-term value creation is essential, how beneficial socially responsible investments are and the opportunities for private-public partnerships, the challenges we face in our profession today and how we can rebuild public trust. Global trends that ensure readiness to go to market and attract the right investors. How we can harness artificial intelligence for sustainable development. Why we should invest in the well-being of our workforce and create a more supportive and compassionate corporate culture. The importance of identifying and mitigating the heightened risk of fraud. Inspiring chronicles of a few entrepreneurs and how we can aid in the growth of the SME sector to drive economic growth. It is time we step forward together as business leaders and discover how we can contribute to preserving our planet and its people. Our heritage. Many businesses, one planet.
As you're aware, the 20th Kappa Conference and the 42nd National Conference of CS Sri Lanka this year is themed around Heritage, Many Businesses, One Planet. So we are ready to start the session 1 of the day 2 of technical sessions, where we are ready to talk about the right artificial intelligence, AI for good, not destructive, but constructive. So we are ready to introduce the first keynote speaker to take us through these lines. Dr. Kasun, who is joining us from the US, is a postdoctoral research associate in machine learning and public policy at the Carnegie Mellon University. Before joining CMU, Dr. Amarasinghe received his PhD in computer science from Virginia Commonwealth University, Virginia, and his Bachelor of Science from the University of Peradeniya, Sri Lanka. Dr. Kasun has more than 7 years of research experience in AI and has co-authored more than 25 peer-reviewed journals and conference articles. In addition, Dr. Kasun holds one US patent with another pending. In Dr. Kasun's current research across AI and public policy, he collaborates with the government organizations and nonprofit to developing AI systems that support consequential the human decisions. Further, his research interests extend to AI and algorithmic fairness. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our first keynote speaker, Dr. Kasun Amarasinghe.
Hello, thank you very much for that great introduction. As you mentioned, my name is Kasun, and I'm absolutely honored and chuffed to be speaking at the CAPA conference and the conference for the Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. I'm gutted that I'm not there in person. It would have been a good opportunity to come back home and visit my family as well. So a quick shout out to the team that I work with, because a lot of the things that I will talk about today are not my work per se. It's the collective group's work and the way we approach and we think about using artificial intelligence in making consequential decisions and even decisions pertaining to achieving business goals. Raid Ghani, who's the professor and the director of the team, Kit Rodolfo, who's a senior scientist, and Dr. Peter Casey, who's a program director. We all work together on these projects, and I should give them credit for the stuff that I'm going to talk about. Before we get to the brunt of it, let's dispel some myths around artificial intelligence and and lay some groundwork so that we can work on that. Let's disentangle some buzzwords that's being thrown around in the media and in whatever you see on the internet. So artificial intelligence is the first and foremost thing. Artificial intelligence formally is the study of embedding intelligence in machines. That means without explicitly telling what to do to a machine figuring out what and reasoning and deciding what the next steps are. Machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence techniques where we talk about the study of algorithms actually learning from data, using data to learn patterns, and then using those patterns to predict outcomes and give us information. Deep learning is another subset of machine learning. So it's a class of machine learning algorithms that tries to mimic how we learn in our brain through an interconnected neuron network. And this is how we can look at these three terms. Artificial intelligence, which is the bigger bucket. Machine learning is a subset. Deep learning is a subset of machine learning. And there's another term that gets thrown around, which is data science. How does that fit in here? So you have these three things, and then you have an application domain where you actually have to apply these things to get something out of it. Data science kind of lives in the intersection. So it takes mathematics, it takes statistics, it takes computer science, and AI, machine learning, deep learning, all of these things together and applies into an application domain to give us something useful. This is a good way to look at things. But in reality, all of these words are just used interchangeably these days. So all of these things mean the same thing. It's just learning from data now. So some myths. We are scared of robots coming and the robot apocalypse and just them taking over the world. You can rest easy because we really haven't built machines that's smart enough yet. So at least for the time being, that's probably not going to happen. It's destroying humanity in a different way. We'll talk about that later. But at least now we are not going to have someone like Skynet just coming in and taking over the world. Another common misconception is that artificial intelligence is robotics. no, robotics is a part of artificial intelligence. Yes, there are very interesting applications of robotics together with artificial intelligence, but that doesn't mean that every AI is a robot. And the other side of things, and people think that we put AI to it, we solve the problem, we can solve anything with it, and AI is a silver bullet. It's not the case as well. So we need to be realistic about what the capabilities of machine learning or artificial intelligence algorithms are and what can do with them. Hopefully, today's discussion would shed some light into that fact. However, even though we don't have robots on artificial intelligence just taking over the world, we interact with AI on every aspect of our day-to-day lives now. The way we consume information is heavily governed by AI. How we search information on the internet, we Google things, right? We get when we type a query in, we get the results. That's completely AI. How we find our way now, we can't do anything with our Google Maps these days. So we intend to rely on an AI figuring out how to take us to the destination that we want to go to and predicting when we would get there depending on the traffic conditions and such. How we consume entertainment, Netflix, YouTube, Instagram, whatever you look at, the information that you see is heavily curated towards you based on what you have consumed so far and what people like you have consumed in the world, the rest of the world. So it's learning about us and it's heavily curating that. That's one way actually how AI is destroying the world, but let's not do that. And how we shop. Amazon is telling us, you bought this, you might be interested in this as well. So, okay, that's another thing for us to buy. So AI is heavily used to tell us what to buy, to govern our needs and how we shop things. All of this is possible because AI has become data-driven. It is able to consume huge amounts of data, learn patterns from them, and make useful predictions. So modern AI is mainly machine learning driven. So in our day-to-day lives, we produce so much data. So everything that we do on the internet is stored. All the text messages that we send, all the pictures that we send around, everything that we search on the internet, everything that we watch on YouTube, and even with this like CCTV cameras and such being installed, there's a lot of video data being recorded. And we've gotten really good at storing this data and storing them in such a way that we can analyze them very easily. So as the computation and storage technologies have improved, we are actually able to store massive amounts of data that is being created at a very large pace. And now we have the algorithms, we have the data, now we have the algorithms to actually learn from these patterns and discern similarities, dissimilarities, identify, okay, these two people are very similar in terms of the content that they watch. So maybe what one person watches, the other person might like it as well. Like make those predictions and output very crucial information that we use to make our decisions. The result, we almost have self-driving cars. We have smart assistants that can give us information about the weather, answer questions for us, tell us what to do, tell what our schedule is, understand what we're talking about. You have smart watches reading your vitals and assessing your health and predicting your health outcomes. And all of this is possible because we have these systems to actually learn from data. With these grand applications aside, we can use these capability to actually make our day-to-day decisions or business decisions or policy decisions easier as well. Because with the availability of data, we have the opportunity of learning patterns and using that as an extra piece of information to make our decisions. So let's look at some examples where AI can help us make operational decisions. Let's leave the self-driving cars and the smart assistants aside and see how we can apply this into our businesses and our processes. So this is one project that our team worked on. One county in Ohio was concerned that there was a certain, in a certain county, the students, the graduation rate on time, high school graduation rate was very low. So they wanted to provide extra support to students so that they would graduate on time, but they didn't know who to extend the support to. So but they had very rich data about the students and the previous students who had not graduated on time and who had graduated on time. So our team got together with them and designed an AI system to predict how likely is it for this student to not graduate on time, for what reasons, and then use that risk tendency to allocate resources so that those students could get the support they need so that they can graduate in time. Let's take a business decision. You can use AI to decide which products to assign discounts to, because if you say you want to have a promotion where you want to have some discounted products in your grocery store, let's say, which products should you use to give the discount to? Data can help you to actually calculate the probabilities of if you give this product, given there's a discount, there's a high chance of this product being sold, and there's a high chance of you maximizing your profit. Let's go to the medical field. You can use AI to decide where to locate ambulances to maximize coverage and minimize the time where the response time. And you can use data, and you can use patterns learned from data to actually optimize these. And you can use lawyers efficiently answer questions by using AI. This is another project that we worked on where the AI actually predicted an answer. You've taken the question, automatically predicted an answer, and the lawyer was left to vet that and edit that and send it out rather than write it from scratch. So save them time. So in all of these cases, the AI is used to help the human make a more informed decision, not to replace the human, but to augment the human's decision. So in this talk, I said the right AI is impactful, fair, transparent, and ethical. So let's look at the impactful side. So the first and foremost thing that I wanted to convey is the importance of the developers and the users of a system working together in designing the system. Often the role of the users in designing the system gets diminished, and the AI developers tend to dominate the conversations, dominate what needs to be done, and build something cool rather than build something useful. So me as an AI developer have been guilty of this as well. So it's important to work together and figure out how to work together. So as I said, there are two main camps. There's the people who design and develop these systems that can be either in-house data science team or another company that you've procured to build this system. And you have the domain experts or the users who will be eventually using the system that's built. The AI developers bring certain capabilities. They know how to build AI systems and evaluate them, of course. They know what's possible when they are given data. They know how to convert operational requirements into an analytical formulation, right? And on the user side, they know all of this. They know the business requirements. They know what needs to be achieved. The AI developer doesn't know that. They understand the practical constraints. They understand even though the system is used, there are only so many things it can do. There are so many things they can achieve with the other resources they have. They understand how and who would use the system, whether the user would need a special training or whether they would need to hire some new people. They know the key stakeholders, like who's going to be impacted, who needs to approve what. They know all of that. They know what data are available as well. The AI developers don't know that. So it's important to identify that both of these roles are very critical in getting to something successful or impactful. So my assumption, given the conference, is that most of the crowd here today would be on the user side. So I wanted to implore and really emphasize on the role that the users would play in developing the right AI. Let's say, let's go through how we work together like this. So the main thing in ensuring a successful AI project is project scoping. So the scoping process is very vital in order to make sure that you have something that is useful. Step one in the scoping process is the goal. And everyone who's listening to this would say, duh, yes, it's the goal. But often it doesn't happen like that. In an AI system, mostly the conversation starts with data because everybody's excited about the data. The conversation always starts with what data do we have? What can we predict? What can we build? It shouldn't be the case. You always start with the goals, the operational metric that you're trying to improve. That's where you should start. And that comes from the user, not from the AI developer. A well-defined goal should at least have these three qualities. It should be specific. It shouldn't be an abstract goal. It should be measurable. There should be a metric attached to it. Because if you can't measure something, you can't improve it. Because if you can't measure it, how would you know whether you've reached your goal or not? And it should be achievable. It should be within your control. And for instance, eradicating poverty would be a very abstract goal for a project. You might need to get more specific, narrow the scope down a little bit more and come to a very achievable goal. Let's take an example. Let's take the high school example from before. When we started scoping this project, the starting goal was we want to improve educational outcomes for the students. Then it was a very abstract goal. How would we measure? What does it mean by improving educational outcomes? How long would it take? Is it going to college? Is it them getting a good job later in life? Is it their income later on? So it was very abstract. So through discussions, we narrowed it down. Okay, let's maximize graduation rates, but not just do that, but we have to keep into account the disparities that arise across racial groups, especially in an American context. So the goal that we arrived at was maximize the graduation rate while minimizing the disparities across racial groups. So that's a very specific goal that we can measure because graduation rate is something that we can measure, right? And disparities across racial groups is also something that we can measure because we could calculate the graduation rates stratified by the racial groups. So that's an example. So step one, you have to determine a goal that has these characteristics. Once you have that, so yeah, this is the most critical step of the scoping process. So once you have that, you go to the actions. What are you planning to do with the AI's output? So this is a very important question. And in our experience scoping these projects with different partners, government and non-government, a lot of the times they are hung up on what they need. They haven't really thought about what would we do if we have it. So this is a question that we talk about a lot. What would you do differently? If the AI was there and it was predicting what you need to, what would you do differently from today? And the thing that you want to do, is it in your control? Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's under the purview of a different organization, or it's under the purview of a different section in the same organization, but you haven't involved them in this process. Maybe you need to involve them. So like that, you need to answer these two questions. And most of the time, this is the answer that we get. So if that's the answer to these two questions, you probably should figure that out before you move forward, because then the chances are, if you don't have this, you'll have a nice dashboard and a really nice interface and some outputs that you would not use at all. And you spend all of these resources on and spend all of this money on spending something that's ornamental. So please don't do that. And once you have the actions figured out, you go to the data. And there's a plethora of questions that you could ask. Who owns the data? What type of data do you have? What format is it in? Is it Excel files? Or is it in PDFs? Or is it in printed documents? Is it CSVs? Is it in a database? So all of these things we've seen it's sometimes we had this project with a South American partner where we were trying to identify collusion and fraud in government procurement practices. The data was just in like printed files. So there was a whole other process needed to digitize that to get to a usable form. So it's very important to ask these questions. And is it ethical to use the data? Just because some data are available doesn't mean that it's ethical to use it. So should we be using it? Those are the questions that you need to ask. And again, these questions need to be answered both by the AI developer and the user, the partnering organization. So once you have all of those figured out, then you come to the analysis. You should not come to the analysis phase unless you have determined the goals, the actions, and the available data. There are different types of analysis that you could do. You could do predictive analysis, where you predict future outcomes. You could do descriptive analysis, where you try to understand similarities, dissimilarity in past events. You could detect certain patterns that we call it classification mostly. You can do optimization types of analysis, and you can do causal inference type analysis, where you try to identify cause and effects. So all of these analyses, you can answer two questions. You need to answer two questions. Does the analysis inform the identified actions? Again, we go back to the actions and say, the output that we expect from the model or the AI system, does it actually help us do the action before? If it's not, then either you need to change the actions or rethink the analysis. And is the data sufficient, the available data sufficient to perform the analysis? Do you only have data for a month? Probably you should then go back and collect more data, improve your data infrastructure before you get to that. So these are the 4 steps that you should really thoroughly go through in the scoping process to get to something that is impactful. And the process is iterative. It's not a linear process like I discussed. Here, you can jump from one step to the other and keep refining the scope until you get to something tangible. So once you have that, let's talk about the ethics piece really quickly. Ethics should not be an afterthought. It's a multifaceted thing, and it's really difficult to generalize what ethics means because it's contextual. But ethics should be embedded in each step of the scoping process. You should be asking ethics questions in the goals space. You should be asking ethics questions in the action space. You should be asking ethics questions about data and in the analysis. So these are not the only ways to think about ethics, but these are good jumping off points. Privacy and security. So can you assure, if there are protected data about individuals, let's say public health data, do you have the safeguards in place to secure the privacy of the people whose data are in there? Do they know that their data is being used? And is it stored in a secure place? Transparency. Do all the stakeholders that need to know about this project know about this project? Do the people whose data it is know that their data is being used? So Facebook, we have this conversation all the time, right? Whether they are upfront about how they're using our data that they collect through the social media platform. Discrimination and equity. Can the model, that the AI system that we build, the outputs that we get from it, can it exacerbate disparities that already exist in society? In an American context, again, criminal justice systems using artificial intelligence systems to predict recidivism rates and stuff. There was a huge study done around it to say that it was heavily biased against African Americans when compared to Caucasians. Social license. If everybody in the world found out about your project, would you be okay with it? If there's a headline in the paper about your project, would it be a positive one or a negative one? Those are good things to think about. Accountability. Who's accountable for decisions? Who's accountable for the machine learning model? Who's accountable for the decisions made used by the machine learning model? What's the causal link between the decision that you make and the outcomes that might occur, and who's accountable for that? So thinking about accountability in every step is also very important. So ethics, it's difficult to distill into one slide and say these are the things that you should think about. But it's important to know that ethics is an embedded part throughout the project, from scoping until you deliver the AI system. I'll talk quickly about two aspects of ethics that get talked about a lot these days: transparency and fairness in machine learning or AI. I'll quickly start with fairness or unfairness. So we have to understand that AI systems are developed using data that's collected from a biased world. If we are trying to predict employment in the medical sector, the data that we collect, unfortunately, would have male doctors would be largely males, nurses would be largely female. So for the AI model, that would learn the association between gender and the profession, which is unacceptable. However, but if we are not cognizant about that bias, we can't do anything to mitigate it. And not just the data, the system, like design choices that we make can introduce further biases into the system. So we need to be cognizant about that. So about fairness and biases in the model, we need to think about in entirely design process, and we need to think about how to mitigate those. Some good questions are: think about who's affected by the decisions. Is it actually affecting a real person? And who is that? And is there a faction of society who would be discriminated against more when compared to others when you use this system? Can you measure the inequities? That's a very important thing. Can you actually assign a metric value to how biased the model is? And if you can measure it, what mitigative measures can you take? But if you don't measure it, you wouldn't know that there's bias, and you wouldn't know how to mitigate it. So this is a very important part, and at least the least we could do when we build a model is to measure the biases that it could have. So this is something that our group has worked on, mainly Kit and Rai, where they tried to make the process of mapping your system to a fairness metric easier. So this is a simplified version of the tree. There's a more elaborate version of the tree in the links that I've given as well. To go through the tree and find what metric that you should be looking at to ensure fairness, at least mitigate some level of biases. Let's talk quickly about transparency and explainability. So we talked about fairness. Explainability, what we mean by this is, can the algorithm explain its overall decision-making process and individual decisions? Can the algorithm give us an explanation about, okay, this is what I've learned from the data that you gave me. And for each individual prediction, can it say, yeah, this is why I'm giving you this particular prediction instead of the other ones? Unfortunately, most of the complex AI systems that we use them as black boxes because they are very complex. I mentioned deep learning before. Deep neural networks are very complex algorithms that is difficult to explain. Even a random forest, even though it's based with trees, it's difficult to explain. So we don't know what it's learning. We don't know why it's giving us the predictions that it's giving us. So trying to make them explainable can have multiple benefits. We can actually peek into the black box and say, what is it learning? When does it make mistakes? No model is going to be perfect, give us perfect predictions. Can we actually trust this system and the predictions? If someone is affected by the disease, can we seek recourse from that? So it's great to get insight into that. So if you are meeting with someone who's developing an AI system, please ask for transparency requirements, because that can give you very valuable information into the model. So one unfortunate example from the recent years, Apple came up with a credit card. I know that I have 10 seconds more. If you can give me 2 minutes, I'll be done. Apple came up with a credit card, and apparently when the husband and wife who has very equal financial status applied for a credit card, the husband got 20 times more the credit limit, and the wife didn't. And it kept happening. And when they looked into it, Apple said there's no bias in the model. Goldman Sachs apparently built the model, and they didn't know anything about the model because it was a black box. So they didn't have transparency, and they didn't have bias mitigation. So it was a fiasco at that time. So we shouldn't let that happen, and those things should be tackled in the scoping phase and in the design phase. So in the end, after all of this, these are the things that I wish anyone listening would take away from this. Users and developers should work closely together. They both have equal responsibility in developing a useful, impactful AI product. We always should start with the goals, not with the data. We shouldn't get sidetracked with the analysis of the goal. And the goal of a project is not to predict something or to build a dashboard. It's to improve some operational metric. It's very common when we ask someone, so what's the goal of the work? We are trying to predict so and so, such and such. So it shouldn't be the goal. Each analytics component should inform some action. If there's no action attached to a certain analysis, that analysis shouldn't be done, and it's probably a waste of time. And ethics should not be an afterthought. It should be the center focus throughout the project, because if we don't do that, there's going to be a lot of negative impact that we cause on society, and we should try to mitigate those things as from the beginning of an AI project. So thank you very much for listening to me. I apologize for taking a couple of minutes extra, and it was a great pleasure.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kasun Amarasinghe. What a kickoff to the day 2 of the 42nd National Conference of CA Sri Lanka and the 20th CAPA Conference. Thank you very much for that very insightful presentation. Would like to request you to remain online as we are ready to start the panel discussion now, where we would entertain all your questions. So first, it gives me great pleasure in inviting session chair to take the proceedings. We have Mr. Arjuna Herath, who's joining us from Sri Lanka. He's a senior partner and the head of the consulting for EY Sri Lanka and the Maldives. As head of the consulting at EY, Arjuna directly overlooks technology consulting, which include services in the areas of technology, digital transformation, in addition to business transformation services and business strategy-related services. Fellow member and the past president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka and the past president of the South Asian Federation of Accountants, and was a board member of the Confederation of Asia Pacific Accountants. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Arjuna Herath. Then we also have Mr. V.S. Bharadasarthi. Bharada, who is joining us from India, is a chartered accountant from ICAI and ICEWF, and an alumnus of the Harvard Business School's AMP 2011. Prior to being appointed as the president of Mobility Services Sector, Mahindra Group, he was the Group CFO and the Group CIO. Mahindra Group was awarded with the Lifetime Achievement Awards for both his CFO and CIO roles. He is also the recipient of the Business World Yes Bank Hall of Fame Award, Best CFO of India Award by IMA Corporate Excellence Awards, and Digital Icon of India Award by HPE and CIO 100 Hall of Fame by CIO after winning the awards for 4 consecutive years. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. V.S. Vardazarthi. Then we also have Professor Maria Slaskovic. Professor Maria, who's joining us from Norway, is the head of the Department of Information Science and Media Studies and is a professor with the Faculty for Social Sciences of the University of Bergen, Norway. She's a computer scientist who does research in AI. She works in AI ethics and is interested specifically in issues of machine ethics. How do we build machines, or rather, how do we program them so that they behave ethically? Professor Maria specifically works on automating ethical collective decision-making and is motivated by the phenomenon of autonomous systems increasingly becoming moral arbitrators by virtue of the disruption of the machine society segregation. She believes that the automation, particularly of cognition, is not always possible without automating aspect of ethic, reasoning, or values. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Maria Slaskovic. Then we also have Mr. Tim Timscher. Tim, who's joining us from Australia, is a Chartered Secretary of the Chartered Practicing Accountant and the cybersecurity professional who leads 365 Architects and technology company that craft digital transformation solutions utilizing cloud services, artificial intelligence, robotic process automation, and data analytics for corporate, non-profit, and government organizations globally. Tim is the digital governance technologist within the Graduate School at the Business at the Queensland University of Technology, a board member of the Governance Institute of Australia, a member of the Standards Australia, IT 043, Artificial Intelligence Working Group, and a member of the National ESG Policy Commitment within the CPA Australia. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tim Timscher. Over to the session chair to take us through the panel discussion.
Right. Thank you very much. Am I audible very well? Right. Thank you. Thank you very much. So great. Very good morning to everyone who's joining this session. It's great. It's my pleasure to be part of this session and to facilitate a discussion among the eminent panelists we have today. We do have a lot of expertise with the panelists here and the speaker, Dr. Kasun Amadasinghe. Thank you, Kasun, for an excellent, insightful presentation. That sets the stage for a very good discussion. How I intend to run this session is that I would want each of the panelists to talk 10 minutes on their sort of thoughts around the subject and their speciality. And then, of course, clearly we will want as many questions to come. Please do not hesitate to put in the questions to the system, which I can pick up and then, of course, direct it to the relevant panelists. In order to sort of give a context to the discussion, I just want to share some thoughts, after which I will invite each of the panelists. We clearly heard from Dr. Kasun the rapid advances that are being made in artificial intelligence, which all of us believe will have profound implications for the economy as well as the society at large. Yet, in most instances today, we still live in a wild west of AI development and its global impact, and not much regulations, not much rules around it. And I suppose as we go along, we will see certain frameworks and regulations that will emerge. You will also agree that the rapid advances in AI and the increased performance has been accompanied by an increased model complexity, as we heard from Dr. Kasun again, turning AI systems into a black box in his terms, whose decisions can be hard to understand by humans sometimes. We know that AI can be very complex to the extent that even its creators cannot trust why AI systems sometimes make those decisions. Of course, these black box models can have significant implications and ramifications to society, as the decisions made by these systems not only influence the business outcomes, but can also impact many lives, from driving cars and preventing crime, to product recommendations, making investment decisions, approving loans, and hiring employees, are few of the examples. And machine learning models are increasingly being employed to replace or facilitate human decision making. So it becomes increasingly important for stakeholders to understand how these algorithms make their decisions, to gain trust and confidence in AI and in the use of AI and in using this in their operations. As AI solutions may also be ingrained with increased bias, racism, sexism, and due to the data that's been used, and it can augment many of our social problems like wealth inequality. It's important, and it is important for us to understand how we could get machine learning and get AI to work for us in a very in an appropriate manner. In order to handle these, we will, as I said earlier, need some regulations, rules around AI and AI ethics, which does not exist yet in a coherent manner globally. And I'm just wondering whether AI itself will create laws for future artificial intelligence. And that's possibly something that will happen as we go along. We will talk about all these. The specialists are here to really shed some light around these. This session is also to somewhat to demystify AI for business and to talk about leveraging AI for the greater good of business, the community, and the world at large. So I hope the session will endeavor to address your questions about AI that are critical to your business, its application and strategies and actions required in this regard. And as business leaders, you may want to know how AI and data analytics are going to help you to understand questions like what type of AI applications are out there in your that you can use in your business or you can benefit from. And also, is your business ready for AI? And how, what's the environment context that you need to create for that? And more importantly, can AI even solve your business challenging business problems are some of the things that possibly we want to get to during this session. And I'm hoping that we'll have adequate time to get to that. So with that brief introduction and context for the sessions, can I invite first Mr. Tim Cher, to share his thoughts around the subject, and then we will move on to the other panelists. Over to you, Tim.
Thank you very much for the introduction. And good morning, everyone, or for those in different parts of the world, good afternoon or good evening. Wow, are we lucky to be living today? I think that history is going to look back upon 2021 and say, remember when we used to think AI was a thing or was something special? I think that we are going to find that AI becomes embedded in everything we do. It's a little bit about like the fallacy that we live in today, that special time in history where we think there's such a thing as privacy. But let's talk about AI. So AI today, there is so much opportunity. And although I'm suggesting that it's going to be part of everything we do in the future, there's still quite an unlevel playing field. There are those organisations yet to get started on their AI journey. There are those that are starting to see some early benefits, and that are those that have it really well embedded in everything that they do. So part of the attraction for me of AI is the link to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And I think that there's a place for AI in every one of the 17 goals. And to give you a few examples there, and Dr. Kaysen also talked about one of those, goal number 4 around quality education. I've actually been doing some work around goals number 1 and 2, which are in relation to no poverty and zero hunger. So we have a charity that we do work for that employs about 10,000 volunteers, and they go out and help people in unfortunate situations where they're unable to feed themselves or are finding it difficult to get by with the financial situation they're in. And we've provided a system for them that starts to look at the interventions they're making and how they can improve the service delivery for that organisation. Another example is the goals 8 and 9 around work, economic growth and innovation. And I think this is the area where automation or robotic process automation within the field of AI can certainly play a large role. We have goals 5 and 10 related to gender equality and to reduced inequalities. And I think that doing analysis around factors to support women or non-binary genders is another area where AI can provide benefits. Climate action, goal 13, better understanding our impact and the way that we consume resources. And I think that the final goal, number 17, around partnerships. There is lots of data that every organisation has. Sharing that data to provide unique insights creates lots of opportunities, as well as the open data movement and being able to have much larger, freely available data sets available to us all. I'd also like to talk about how AI is not coming. It's here. We have AI with us today, and everyone will have different experiences in this regard. I wake up in the morning and I have a Google Home Assistant which wakes me up on time, reads me the news, tells me the weather and how long it will be before I'm to arrive at work. I did experience today an alert from one of my systems that told me of a operational KPI that had triggered the fact that I should go and have a look into the support systems that we're offering our customers. What we need to be a little bit careful of is shadow AI. So this is a term that relates to AI becoming part of your organisation, potentially without your knowledge. So it's very easy today for a business unit or a team leader within a business to go out and find an AI solution, perhaps pay with it with a credit card and download some software and start using an AI solution that may be outside the knowledge of the organisation or the IT department. It's an area to be aware of. It's something to think about and discover whether you need some policies or systems to become aware of that potential shadow AI risk. I think that in relation to AI, Dr. Kaysen also spoke about some myths. And there's one really that I'd like to focus on this morning. And that is the threat to work, this concern that AI might take our jobs. And not only do I think that that's unlikely to be the case, at least for a very long time, I think that it is a tremendous opportunity specifically for the accounting community. As a community, we face threats of things like tax authorities taking the role of tax accountants, making it easier for individuals to lodge their own tax returns. We see the offshoring of straightforward accounting work to other regions around the world. And we see this threat potentially of AI replacing some of the tasks that we do as accountants. And yet the training we receive as accountants through our professional programs is exactly what we need to be able to drive AI through organisations. And those skill sets that we learn about being very analytical, about being very good at developing processes are perfect for driving AI through corporate entities. So I think that there is fantastic opportunity for accountants. I think the profession is not in any way at the risk of AI taking over roles, but in fact, it's the complete opposite. And I would suggest this is the future role for many of us as accountants. I'm not sure how I'm going for timing there, but I really want to leave plenty of time for questions. So I'll pause and let someone else speak, if that's all right.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tim, for those useful and insightful thoughts. Maria, would you like to go next? And then we'll get to Partha thereafter. Over to you, Maria.
Sure. Happy to. Thanks for inviting me to this panel. It's very exciting to be here in a somewhat new environment for me. I'm typically among AI people discussing this issue, but it's nice to see an initiative from a big discipline. And it's super exciting for me, because I think that it is the right way to move forward, not with fear, but with understanding of things. And I very much like this mention that AI should be demystified. And I think there is a lot there to demystify. We have this idea of AI as an event that is going to happen in such a way that we will have to notice it happen, because the ideas, and people like me are a little bit guilty of this, because when we are writing our slides, we want it not to be just text, and we need a picture, and then where is the picture of AI? Well, we will borrow it from some movie, and then you see Terminators there, HAL, GLaDOS, all kinds of evil robots or softwares from movies that have done bad things. And in a way, we kind of create subconsciously this idea of AI as this mystical, powerful force that we can't understand, that will somehow harm us. The reality is that what Tim mentioned is that we have a situation in which we do have AI already here, and we have it in a very non-glamorous way. So I was in preparation of this panel, I was discussing an example in which AI has been introduced at my university for doing the accounts of the university. So we have a system in which basically, it used to be a system in which when you go away for a conference or something, and or have any kind of other expense, then you file the claim to get reimbursed for this event and expense, and then you submit your receipts together with this claim. And there was a poor person somewhere, I'm not poor as economically, but somebody who has to do a job that is not very exciting, who had to actually go through all of these claims, compare them to the receipt, and then tick off a box. Yes, the claim is substantiated. And this ticking off of box now was automated since perhaps 3 years. And when I was discussing this, somebody mentioned, well, I mean, this is not really, it's not like exciting AI, right? But in reality, it is exactly AI, object character recognition. And it took us 50 years to be able to do this, right? So it is happening. So what is the interesting part here? The interesting part is how we are actually embedding different types of smart software programs, and they're smart because they operate without human control, perpetual human control or intervention, and then doing tasks that typically require some smartness to do. So what I would like to briefly touch upon is that particular event, that invisible event when we take a task and we kind of replace that a human used to do and replace it with some kind of a software or a machine in some cases altogether. It is very ephemeral. It is very elusive to talk about ethics because, as Dr. Kassoun said, it is very contextual. You can't write a script and say, okay, this is what it means to be ethical in this particular situation for you, because there are too many different factors. It has to be analyzed in every situation specifically. But what all of these have in common is that these replacements are replacing a human task. Now, humans, very clever that we are, all over the planet, we do not only do what we are told, in fact, we are explicitly good at not doing what we are told. So in every job, everywhere, people do the task and then they do something else. They handle exceptions. So people figure out what to do, how to react, what actions to take if something goes wrong. And this is the part where we have to be careful when we are automating their tasks with AI. Again, I think it was Dr. Kassoun, we don't automate directly, we don't automate fully, we augment the tasks with certain support in with machines. I will use the term machine for both a software program and a device. It doesn't matter ultimately for this. So this is what in AI we call accountability, right? And it was touched upon a little bit that you have to have accountability when you're using AI. What does that mean? It means that when when you are implementing your system, when you are building in your program to recognize these receipts, or to, I don't know, drive your car, or even to kind of call you in the morning and tell you, oh, you should wake up for a panel in Sri Lanka, you have to think about the cases when something might go wrong. And then what happens when that thing go wrong? That is accountability. To be specific, if some receipt is not recognized by the system because there is a reason, then the system should contact the user, which it will, and say, well, I mean, I'm sorry, I cannot process this claim because your receipt is not in order. But if a person tells me that, and I'm the person who has submitted the claim, then the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to ask, well, why isn't it in order, right? Because you are the one telling me it's not okay. Why isn't it okay? And this person will tell me, okay, it is an informal receipt. It doesn't have a stamp. The dates don't match, something like that. And then I will ask, well, what can I do about that? The person will tell me, well, you either have to forget about this part of the claim, or you have to give me a better receipt. And this is what better receipt means. So all of this is information that the person supplies to another person. And if you replace this person A, the supplier, in a way, with a computer program, then there has to be some kind of a way that person B, your customer, still is able to handle their situation when something goes wrong. So ask somewhere that, okay, what has gone wrong? Why? Who is responsible? Who can change the situation? So I have a bunch of notes, and I'm trying to get through them to just remain on topic. It's very easy to talk about this at a great extent. Yes. So when we start talking about AI accountability, and we'll say you have to be careful when you automate. You have to make sure that the system does behave well when it's working okay, but also that you know how to handle the situations in which the system fails, and you have to call a human perhaps, or you have to identify the person who is the user who uses your AI system that has gone wrong for somehow, that has an exception has happened, has to know who they can contact, who has the power to change this system. When we have this discussion, what us people who build such systems, well, I personally don't build them. I study the theory of them, think about them, let's put it that way. We often forget something that's very important, that is obvious to us, but it is not obvious to the people who use systems and procure them. And that is that we talk about machine learning, we talk about neural networks, we talk about deep learning as if they were one thing. And specifically when we say, well, it's a black box algorithm, we have the same box in mind. But in reality, a computer program is built to fit a particular problem, to solve a particular problem, to fit a particular task. And a user can always require that certain conditions are satisfied by that program. There is not one machine learning algorithm, there are very many. There is not one neural network architecture, there are very, very many. There is not one object character recognition system. There are many, and they have different properties. And these properties are not only how fast they are or how much memory they use, which is properties by which computer scientists typically evaluate algorithms, but these are also, can this system explain, can it give us enough information so that somebody can kind of build another system that provides a user a meaningful explanation of what the system has done? Is it possible to keep account as to who in this, how much information about the operation of the system can I give to the user? Is that information enough for the user to be able to do something when things go wrong? All of these are also properties that, or I think the term is affordances, that come with a particular design of a particular algorithm. And what is most important of all, instead of talking about this, very elusive term of ethics, is to talk about the possibilities of the user to specify specific requirements for their needs that the algorithms that we are giving them should satisfy. So that was a bit of an incoherent, perhaps, description of the topic. I want to move away from these terms that are ethics and good, and move to terms that people that are not in AI can relate to and find meaning in. I very much liked, so there's 1 minute, I say I stop and then something pops into my mind. I very much like how we start the day today with sustainability. And I don't like the fact that people don't talk about sustainability in automation, because it does not mean that we are using, you typically sustainability, and you see these pretty pictures with nature and so on, and we're thinking about sustainability of nature, and that is very important. But we also have sustainability of society. So when we are changing tasks that people do, we inevitably change the society that those people live in, be that the little society of an office, or the society of a company, or the society of a city, or the society of a country, or the society of the planet. So sustainability is also an issue in AI. When I replace the tasks of the economy advisor who is checking these claims with a program, and I introduce there something that is not able to handle exceptions and cases that different cases, unpredictable situations, and I just leave it at that, I make the world a worse place. I make this society the worst place for somebody. And I can do that for 1 user, for 2 users, for 3 users, but after a while, my entire service system becomes unsustainable. And this is also an issue that we address with topics such as accountability and fairness to a large extent, although I don't think I should start touching upon that. So thanks for me. That's basically the intro to the topics that I find particularly interesting and engaging for this panel.
Thank you very much, Maria. Very insightful and sets a scene for many questions, but let's see whether we have time to really address some of those questions. But Mr. Parthasarathy, can we have you on now, and then we'll get on to the questions.
Thank you. Namaskar. As I was starting today and listening to all, I just realized 2 things. One is that I was looking at a burning midnight oil and bringing all time zones to this panel in Sri Lanka, and that was very interesting from my point. And the second one was the jargon that I heard today in the morning radio. It said some people are wise, all others otherwise. So you had all the wise people speak till now. So you'll have the not so wise telling you how practical implications of this. Let me start with the presentation.
Hi there, my name is Free Eyes.
Oh my God. And I was thinking I was going to do the presentation. Arjuna, can you hear 3 Eyes?
Yes, we can.
So let's ask Mr. 3 Eyes, what are you doing here?
There are 3 possible answers, sir. I am version 3.0 of the mDrishti program you started. I try to provide 3 possible interpretations of all available data. I provide a little drishti about the state of your business. The 3rd creative eye, the one with foresight.
Wow, you're going to create the 3rd creative eye with a vision, everything, and you're going to become my namesake, Parthasarathy, which means giving a counsel. So tell me about my competitor, John Deere.
Your competitor John Deere has increased the discounts in Maharashtra. Going by the past trends, I predict the market share will increase by 0.1% if they continue this for 3 months. Now, before you ask, I have received this input from the algorithm which captures competitor information.
Wow, you now scared me. I thought I was coming into this conference to tell them about something about AI, and you're saying I'm going to lose market share. So what do I do about this?
Sir, I would prescribe the following. Increase the dealer sales incentive by 10% in Maharashtra. Focus more on dealers around Satara. That's where you will find maximum impact. Increase your salesmen in Nagpur. I am sending you a coverage analysis highlighting regions where they need to be deployed. Conduct BTL activities in regions around Nashik.
Oh, thank you. And I think that's the presentation part that I had, and I'm going to leave that. And that's the AI in action in my company. Okay. And let me tell you, I lied a little bit because this is version 3.0. I'm still not there. quite not that. Yeah. So we are at 2.0 and we have to do little more the learning and so on. And then we can go on to 3.0, which is the session that we are trying to do. Okay. Now let me go on to say that if our profession were to adapt to this situation, how will they adapt it? And I say, therefore, you should think about writing a new book, not about the old book called Built to Last. That was Collins wrote. So the new one by CA should say Built to Change or Built to Adapt. So this is the new world that is coming, and we need to learn to adapt to an AI environment. If I then go to the next one, and just to say, how do I change? I mean, one is to say, I want to change, and how do I change? So a CA or any profession, but mainly I'm talking about our profession, they operate in 3 buckets: enable, enhance, engender. Enable and enhance, you understand, engender is creating something new. And what we do most of the time is we operate 70% of the time in enable and 30% of the time in engender. Now, when AI and automation and RPA and machine learning, everything comes, they can do a lot of our enable job well. Like what Maria pointed out, like what Kasun pointed out, they can do all of this. And then we can use that time to create something new. So we can change the trajectory of what we do. And if we do, then we have a place along with AI in the future. I'll give you some example. In our finance function, we have people who invest money which is surplus in the company. So we said, can we replace one resource, human resource, with a digital resource? So we went about using AI and using machine learning to create a digital resource which will invest. Now it is doing the job faster, better, and even it has got 100 basis points higher returns than the next human resource which was doing. So because it is using the algorithms better, learning, and then using more of it. So this is a very practical example of what we do. It is not necessary that everywhere they will be able to do that, but here was one clear case where it was analyzing a lot of data and it was able to do much better than what I could do as an individual, trying to get all the data in a spreadsheet and trying to then see which one works better. So let me just move back from a practical concept to theoretical concept to something that I believe the future is going to come. The future I call is ICE. So the ICE has 2 components, C and E, climate change and experiential commerce. I believe every company's business model will change because of climate change and experiential commerce. And then I go on to say that only innovative companies will survive. So if innovative companies will survive, then what we have, and we put an N in between that, the ICE will become nice. And that is the new normal. The new normal is only innovative companies will survive, and those who focus on climate change and experiential commerce. So this is a big theme that we want to kind of pick up for going forward. Then you come to a practical one. Then from theory, let's walk to practical. How do I make this happen in real life? So first is, like Tim talked about, many of these RPAs will help us do process automation in our company. I almost have 2 or 3 things that I tell my company people. One is robotics for process automation and AI for breakthrough automation, or breakthrough processes, or breakthrough engendering new things. So this is the way to look at it, is that we can look at RPAs and this to create bots to answer questions, gather questions we cannot answer so that we can create more answers. So that's the kind of thing you can go on. And then last but not least, before I end, that I wanted to say AI will be there, machine learning, analytics, blockchain, and big data. And if I were to sum up what I heard into my practical language, is that all this should come in either to improve quality of life of our customer, of our employees, of our function, but it should improve the quality of life. And second is, it should incorporate sustainability from day one, because if we don't focus on it, from grow more, our company will be no more. So therefore, if you want to go back and think about this, we need to think about AI as a practical tool to enhance my quality of life in a sustainable way. And there I will pause, and I've taken less than 10 minutes as by my watch. Arjuna, because I knew you still wanted to get some questions in. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Partha. Very exciting and interesting. Right. So we have 15 minutes more. There are many questions that have come. What I would really like to do is actually try and synthesize these and put these together in a way that I think I will have only one question that I can direct at each of the panelists and the speaker. So please try and restrict yourself to 3 to 4 minutes max on answering the question when I put it across to you. And so that we can really get around the questions to everyone, and each one will be able to speak. So maybe I'll start with Dr. Kazun. Kazun, so the question revolves around, is there an ability to remove the bias or to identify the bias that data may contain due to various aspects like how you do business, and can be for due to several reasons that the data may contain bias. Can you really remove this bias in facilitating proper decision making, or be able to identify this bias so that the decision making can be more appropriate, is the question.
Thank you, Arjun, and thank you very much for the question. That's a great question. I would switch up the question a little bit, though. I would argue that the data is not what we need to debias. I would argue that the predictions and the decisions that we actually make using those predictions that is used, the AI is using the data, that's the decisions are the ones that we need to debias, and the outcomes that we need to debias. So because even if you, let's say, debias the data, one common approach to debias the data, quote, debias the data is that was used by many companies as well. We don't use gender as an input to a model. We don't use the race as an input to a model. Now our model is fair. So there was many claims like that. It unfortunately doesn't work like that, because there are so many other aspects in data that actually works as an indicator of the race or the gender or the protective, the attribute that you're trying to protect. So I feel my thoughts and the thoughts of our team as well is that we should be thinking about debiasing decisions, like the decision that comes out of the combined decision-making system of the model and the human. So to do that, we may not be able to evaluate the data very well, but we can evaluate models. So for instance, let's say, I think Maria touched on this a little bit as well. Is the model equally correct for all genders? Is the model equally wrong for all genders? Or we can evaluate whether the model is more wrong when it's a woman versus when it's a man, or whether the model gives certain outcomes a little bit more when it's a man versus a woman. So we can, depending on the context and how we are going to use the model, we can kind of predict, or we can think about what are the potential biases that this model could have. That's where, again, the domain expert can play a huge role. And then evaluate your models with respect to those assumptions that you came up with, and see whether the models actually are biased in that way. So if that is the case, then the model is biased, the output of the model is biased, but you can take mitigative actions in the decisions that you make. You don't have to completely follow the AI model, what's giving you. You can take different actions to correct that, the decisions that the model gives you. So that's how I would approach it, not because even if you debias the data, you still have to do that check at the model level, because you don't know what biases you may have introduced in the design process, even if you successfully debias the data, what that means. So I would try to, quote unquote, police the decisions that we make rather than police the data that we use. if we can do both, great, but there's no definition of an unbiased data set, at least I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you, Kasun. Thank you very much for that. The next question is to Tim. Tim, I think you spoke a lot about, you said application of AI is in all 17 SDGs, no worries. But the question is, will AI support our journey towards sustainability? I suppose you answered to some extent this, but I would like you to really dwell on this question. So the question is, will AI support our journey towards sustainability and ESG and SDGs? And what should be the ideal roadmap towards achieving this? Accountants are now really focused on ESG a lot. So maybe you can talk a little bit around ESG as well, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Sure, thank you for the question. The short answer is yes, AI can support the journey. Absolutely. Now, to expand a little bit further and talk about the roadmap, I think that Kasun has already, I think in one of his early slides, talked about the idea of starting with the goals, not the data, not the AI model, or this idea that we just like to have some AI involved. We've really got to think about what we're trying to achieve. And whether we look at it from a purely sustainable development goal perspective, or the wider group of ESG initiatives. And of course, there are lots of other frameworks available. Some of us might be looking through a GRI lens or integrated framework lens, or all sorts of other types of frameworks. What we really need, I think, to ask is, how are we going to approach this? And as you say, what's the roadmap? What I'd like to think about is, how are we going to do this? Who are we going to bring onto the team? Where will we find the experts? And this is an area where it's all emerging. There is new research being done all the time. There's new opportunities to leverage applications and, I guess, AI that's been put in to solve a particular problem and is available to invest in. So where are these experts? We need to have people that we can phone a friend. We need to have people that have done it before, or that we need to build that team of experts around us to help guide not only implementation of AI solutions, but also just envisaging what's possible. So I'd like you to think about, in each of your respective organisations, how are we building internal capability? How are we resourcing up the organisation with people that have got experience or some training in this space? And how are we building our external networks of experts? And finally, how are our governing bodies starting to think about how to govern AI and its use throughout the organisations we work in? So there's a lot of work to do. There's a really rough roadmap of trying to understand what we're trying to achieve, how we're going to build the team to do it, and how we're going to make sure that we're on the right track.
Right, thanks. Thank you, Tim. Thank you. So Maria, the next question is to you. There are two questions that they are independent, but I thought I'll just post both these questions. I thought you might be the more appropriate person to answer this, and just see how you want to emphasize on each of these, or what you want really, how you want to answer two questions at the same time. The first question is, what are the key disciplines, aspects to be in place to have a successful marriage between human and AI? We heard from Kasun about the requirement for a partnership between the users and developers and so on and so forth. But I suppose this takes it to a different dimension, this question. And the second question is, are there laws governing the explaining the explainability of algorithms, models, and how practical will it be to implement such laws? Over to you, Maria.
Thank you. I think these two are very smart questions. I will start with the second one because it informs the first one. So yes and no. So depends where you are in the world. There are different kind of guidelines, and that fuse into laws or have aspiration to become laws. This is the European way. You know, the European Union kind of proposes particular guidelines and laws, and then each parliament in the European country has to take them and make them part into the law, and then they change when that happens. So this is why it's not easy to say, yes, there is this one law. Even in Europe, where I more or less know what's going on, I have no idea what they do in China, for example. But it is extremely easy to implement such laws because they're very, very vague at this point. And so it's easy to satisfy them. And if the goal here is to satisfy the law, then this is very easy to do. Further to the point, most of these laws, and I'm now thinking about this GDPR data protection, which has this one part in which says that how automation of processing of personal data and making decisions about a person should be done. There is that part there. It's very difficult to enforce these laws because there are many more opportunities to break them than there are capacities to track this. And these laws are now playing the role of setting the signal that countries or regions want to move in this direction, more than saying, well, you will be punished in this particular way if you don't obey the letter of the law. And so then I would say, the more important thing to focus on about here is actually obeying the spirit of such regulations. And why would you want to do that? Because it ensures sustainability. I was very excited about what Mr. Parthasarathy has said. That was a very good, there was a very good summary. You have to be able to change and adapt and innovate, otherwise you will not survive. And part of that means being sustainable for your customers. And what is more important, these laws typically enshrine the rights of the users, but not the rights of the employees that work with these particular algorithms. They may want to have all the intentions to do the right thing and protect the users and help the company do everything, but they themselves may not have enough understanding of how the system that they have been faced with or stuck with works. And for them, there is no law. Now, to go to the first question, what disciplines aspects have to be in place to have a successful marriage between human and AI? So here, I love this question. I say the rule of thumb is this. When you have 3 human resources and you replace one of them with the AI, in order to do that, you have to then ask your human resources, what do they do when things go wrong? How often do things go wrong? And how do they handle this? And you will get many different answers. And if somebody's job is mainly like dynamically putting down fires and handling things, and then this is not a good case for replacing that task with an AI. But if a person is able to tell you, okay, this is exactly what I do in the day, this, and this, and that, great, that you can automate. So what needs to be in place is a good understanding of how exceptions are being handled and who has that's before you automate. When you automate, what needs to be in place is a good understanding of when this algorithm misbehaves or goes wrong or makes a mistake, who has the power to change the behavior of this algorithm? Who do you call? Who knows who do you call? So there has to be an accountability line in a way. It's like, okay, this is how the users will know, your customers will know who to call. This is how your employees will know who to call. That needs to be in place. That pipeline, I would say, of accountability that brings you directly to the person who can change this algorithm or the system.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you very much. So, Partha, there are 2 questions again to you, but I think the more important one is, in my view, to bring it, the audience may really like to hear from you on this. The question is, inflexibility of legacy computer systems may be an impediment to successful introduction of AI, and your thoughts around that. And if you do have time in 3-4 minutes, the next question is, did the pandemic teach us AI is not used enough? Over to you, Partha.
Thank you. Yeah, and a very, very pertinent question. But the answer is simple, is that it should not be an impediment. Yeah, what we have is what we have. We have to start with wherever we are. Just think about it like this. If you throw all your data into a lake, and in computer language, call it data lake, then you can have all the analysis done from this. You don't have to worry about what you produce. You can produce something dramatically different from the data that you have. So I always advise my group, because I used to be the group CIO. So think of this as a sermon. I used to say, think digital, be digital, born digital. Think of times when you have to think digital, which is basically your legacy system. How can you think digital? When you start some new process, how you can be digital. And if you are starting a new company or a new unit, start born digital. Think of it almost like a sustainable artificial intelligence and machine learning led unit. That's how you think about it. So then you will be quite okay. Then to give an example of this is that we often use the situation, which is the current situation, to tell service units to ask questions to customers. And sometimes in an automobile industry, they ask this question: sir, you're replacing the car next month. And the customer jumps. Did you hear my call, which I spoke to my wife before I came into the showroom? No, it is not. It is just understanding how his service pattern has changed, leading to the fact that he will replace this car. Yeah. And the month also comes in from an algorithm. So you can use computer very, very judiciously and artificial intelligence to do that. Let it not be an impediment. If you think it is, it will be. Okay. The next part is in terms of pandemic. Arjuna, simply put, Arjuna is first part my name, Maria. Just Partha means Arjuna. Yeah. So just to give you context. So when you look at the pandemic, the fact that the world has survived and thrived is a fact that technology and intelligence has worked. Okay. And the journey of artificial intelligence is like the journey where you mix two things and they become a third component. So as of now, our intelligence is being supplemented by artificial, which is data, and slowly it will start to help you make decisions as well, much more sanely, and follow all the things Kasun, Maria, and Tim suggested to make it right. But like the earlier one, we have motor cars before having road rules, and we had internet before having internet rules. We will get the right rules, provided we make progress for humanity. So with sustainability and quality of life as the basics, so we can go ahead and do everything that you suggested in that question. Thank you. Back to you, Arjuna.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Partha. Thank you very much to all the panelists and Dr. Kasun as a keynote speaker. It was so enjoyable and so useful and insightful, the discussions we had, and I'm sure we could have gone on for many more, at least 1 or 2 hours more, but unfortunately time is up. And I want to thank the organizers and also panelists. We are indebted for your participation and your involvement in this. We have been told by organizers to just remain in this for a few minutes. So please do stay back and hand it back to the computer. Over to you.
To the panel and the session chair, thank you very much for that insightful session on the use of AIA for the right purpose. And would like to request all of you, especially the panelists, to remain online as we have arranged a special demonstration of our own Sri Lankan culture through an act of dance. This time, this particular performance is based on the Sabaragamuwa dance tradition. Sabaragamuwa that you get somewhere in between the upcountry and the lower country. So the dance tradition hails from Sabaragamuwa. Let's enjoy the dance performance. like to express our extreme gratitude to all our sponsors who have made a huge contribution towards the grand success of this edition of the National Conference of CS Sri Lanka and the 20th edition of Kaba Conference. Big thank you to the World of Haileys and John Keel's group. Thank you very much, the platinum sponsors. Then we have the gold sponsors, AIA Insurance, Bank of Ceylon, Bankers to the Nation, and Selinco Life. And of course, we have CPA Australia joining hands with CS Sri Lanka being a gold sponsor, and Demos. Thank you very much for all your contributions. Lanka Tiles PLC, NDB Bank. Thank you very much to all the gold sponsors. Then we have the telecommunication partner, Sri Lanka Telecom Mobitel. Silver sponsors, London Stock Exchange, People's Leasing, Rhino Roofing, SDB Bank. Thank you very much. And bronze sponsors, we have got the Global Housing and Real Estate Private Limited, SoftLogic Life. Big thank you to the print media partners, Vijay Newspapers, starting with Daily Mirror, Daily FT, and the Sunday Times. Thank you very much to the electronic media partners, Legends FM, TV One, and Yes FM.
Haileys Today is a story of resilience and pioneering spirit, together with a journey of accomplishments spanning over 140 years. Haileys Group is home to over 30,000 employees and contributes to approximately 3.5% of Sri Lanka's export income, with an export revenue in excess of $400 million. The group is Sri Lanka's most diversified conglomerate, engaged in 16 business verticals with investments and operations in 15 countries. Haileys has a worldwide reach spanning over 100 countries across 5 regions, with our products sold to over 9.2 million customers globally. The company created history as the first listed company in Sri Lanka to surpass $1 billion in turnover.
මෙය ඔවුන්ගේ අනාගතයේ කොටසක් වන්නට ඉඩ නොදෙන්න. ඔබ මුහුදු වෙරළට යන සෑම අවස්ථාවකම වෙරළ පිරිසිදු කිරීමට පුංචි මිනිත්තුවක් වැය කරන්න. ප්ලාස්ටිසයිකල් වෙතින් පණිවිඩයක්.
Every time I felt like giving up, I kept going because of you. You have a way of making me listen. You are the most precious to me. Because of you, my love, I have changed. Because I want to protect you forever.
Offering unmatched pensions, health and life insurance, AIA's mission is to help you protect your family by being physically and financially strong for them.
With BOC Smart Online Banking, my urgent transactions are securely handled.
Now all my bill payments are right at my fingertips.
I'm in touch with my BOC card whenever, wherever.
Managing my startup fund is just a click away.
BOC Smart Online Banking creates time for the important things in life while your banking is done securely with ease and speed, wherever you may be.
Weren't we supposed to go to the bank today? Every dream has value. every goal a path ahead. But the path to success walks through risks, and the future brings many uncertainties. That's where Selinco Life steps in to de-risk your future. We at Selinco Life know that when you put in the hard work to make your dreams a reality, the uncertainties of the future can hold you back. Through our financial strength and undisputed market leadership, we know how to de-risk the path to your dreams. Our customized life, health, education and retirement plans will ensure that you and your family are provided with the strongest safety net, enabling you to confidently strive towards achieving your life goals without worry. Because life is our business, we know its uncertainties and joys. That's why Selinco Life is always ready to support you for life. So climb on our giant shoulders. Let Selinco Life take on that risk while you go out there, live your dreams, succeed in life, and achieve your life goals.
There's a lot of doors that are to be opened, and I think doing your CPA will definitely help you walk through them.
It's a gateway to a world full of opportunities.
I absolutely think that CPA will future-proof my career.
I think CPA really adds that value is it gives you the opportunity to really hone in on your technical skills, but it also helps you to get a bit more broader understanding of how an organization works and commerce in general.
It helps me understand business models better and how to convert those analyses into something that non-financial members of the organization can understand.
I would recommend the CPA program because it's that stepping stone that allows you to understand where you're going and how you can become that finance professional that we will need in 10, 20 years.
where the richest offerings of nature are turned into a finer form through pure craftsmanship. And I'm not talking about the sapphire on my ring.
Lanka tiles, designed for you, desired by the world.
In life's journey, things may not always go as planned. You can choose to take it on yourself. But this is not an easy task to achieve alone. However, you can also choose to come together. When your family banks together at NDB, you unlock new opportunities to progress. Bank together, grow together with NDB Family Banking. NDB Bank.
What makes a nation great? Is it the richness of its heritage, the beauty of its natural bounty, the state of its state-of-the-art? Or is it the bonds that bind us? For decades, SLT Mobitel has been linking Sri Lankan lives and uniting the nation. Whatever the future may look like, we'll always be right here, connecting you to the things you care most about. SLT Mobitel, the connection.
first step you take till the time we meet. The trusted leader prioritizes you always. From the beginning, we have been working closely together every day. For your every need, convenience guaranteed. Let's ride the wave of success together. The trusted leader prioritizes you always.
All you need under one roof. People's Leasing, the trusted leader.
I know Rhino. He's the coolest dude in our gang.
I know Rhino. He's my boyfriend, na? No matter our little fights, he's still very caring.
I know Rhino Puta. The fellow sleeps in the weirdest of places.
Whatever the weather, with Rhino over your head, you're in a safe place. Rhino cement roofing sheets. Now you know Rhino. I know.
සතුට සැනසුම විඳින්න හෙට ලොවට පියන ගන්න වටින හැමදේ ලබන්න විශ්වාසයෙන් ළඟරැදෙන්න ඔබට වටින දේ හඳුනන ඔබව වටින ඔබ අගයන ඔබට ඉහළින්ම සලකන තැනක් තිබේ ඔබ දිනවන සවිය දිරිය රන්දයි සරු දිවියක් කැන්දයි උස්තැන ඔබ ඉන්දයි ඒ ඔබව වටින හින්දයි
ඔබව වටින SDB බැංකුව.
Global Housing and Real Estate. Global Housing and Real Estate Private Limited is proud to present the groundbreaking Hotel Residencies Development Project in Sri Lanka. A living space in Sigiriya that captures the imagination of those seeking something entirely unique and an investment that offers remarkable returns. The Kingdom. A spectacular vision that will truly exceed your expectations.
ඉස්කෝලෙත් නෑ. යාළුවෝ එක්ක සෙල්ලම් කරපු කාලයක් මතක නෑ. ආසාවෙන් බලාගෙන හිටපු මගේ ආර්ට් එක්සිබිෂන් එකත් කල් ගියා. ඒ වුණාට කොච්චර වැඩ තිබුණත් මගේ අම්මී තාත්තී ගෙදරම එක්සිබිෂන් එකක් කරලා මාව සර්ප්‍රයිස් කළා. හැමෝම මගේ චිත්‍ර ලස්සනයි කියලාත් කිව්වා. අම්මී තාත්තී කිව්වා මේ අමාරු කාලේ ජය ගන්න නම් අපේ ආරක්ෂාව වෙනුවෙන් හැම දෙයක්ම කරන ගමන් අපේ හීන බලාපොරොත්තු අතාරින්නේ නැතුව ඒ වෙනුවෙන් වැඩ කරන්න ඕනි කියලා.
If you value lifestyle, look for the extraordinary. If you seek for business, look for insightful. If you seek for politics, look for anticipation. If you love sports, look for the passion. Daily FT. Be empowered.
There's never a dull moment on Sundays for families who spend time with the Sunday Times, Sri Lanka's favorite English family weekly, with unbiased news, expert financial reviews, top-flight career openings, and informative entertaining features for all ages. Reserve your Sundays for the Sunday Times.
Built on passion and pure resilience, MTV MBC Networks is the pioneering media powerhouse in Sri Lanka, establishing lasting positive impacts through the years on the nation's masses, markets, and its future, perfecting a balance of creativity and innovation. The media arm of the Capital Maharaja Group operates 5 radio stations and 3 TV channels, catering to the entire nation in all 3 languages, supported by News First, Sri Lanka's premier news network, connecting Sri Lanka to information, entertainment, and more 24/7 through its 5 radio stations: Sirasa FM, Shakti FM, Yes 101, YFM, and Legends 966, and its 3 TV channels: Sirasa TV, Shakti TV, and TV1. The network takes pride in CSR initiatives and community building programs that have become some of the island's largest projects. MTV MBC Networks is powered by state-of-the-art equipment, the best broadcast facilities, and a dynamic workforce coupled with strong ethics in line with international broadcasting. With a strategic expansion of the network's digital platforms, MTV MBC has expanded its reach into the global market, creating waves of unique opportunities. MTV MBC. We are more than just a brand. We are the heartbeat of an island.